Hey everybody, and welcome back to Forbidden Unveiled. I'm John Doe, your host, and tonight we are diving into a place where architecture meets the unexplained. Have you ever heard of a house built to confuse ghosts? We're talking about the Winchester Mystery House, and joining me to unlock some of these secrets is our paranormal expert. Uh,
Hey everyone, it's Jane Doe.
so the Winchester Mystery House is like this legendary mansion, right?
Yeah,
But it's famous for being super weird.
that's right. It's in California and it's got like all these staircases that go nowhere and doors that open onto walls and like windows that look into other rooms. It's crazy.
So is it really true that it was designed that way, like on purpose to confuse ghosts?
Okay, so if you were a ghost, would a couple of extra doors really mess you up? The real story is way more fascinating than that. Let's start with Sarah Winchester. She was born in 1839 and she married into the Winchester rifle family. But like her life was filled with tragedy.
Oh man, the Winchester rifle family.
Mhm.
As in like the Winchester rifle.
Yep.
Yep, that's the one. So she had a baby daughter, but sadly the baby died and then her husband died too. And it gets worse because then her mother and father-in-law both died as well, all within just a few years.
Oh my gosh, that is awful. So she inherited a ton of money from the Winchester Company and decided to move out west for a fresh start.
Exactly. And yeah, she was definitely a wealthy woman, but it wasn't quite the $1,000 a day that some people say. In 1886, she went to California, bought a little 8-room farmhouse, and that's where it all began. That's what
Yeah.
she started building. She just never really stopped for like 36 years.
Wait, 36 years? That's longer than some people stay married. You're telling me she just kept adding on and remodeling with no actual plan?
Pretty much.
Hmm.
Just picture this house that's constantly in flux, changing with whatever Sarah was thinking. Doors added, and then walled-up staircases that lead to dead ends, windows that just make you feel disoriented. It's like an architectural puzzle box.
I'm already getting lost just thinking about it. But seriously, why would anyone do that? Was it really to outsmart all those vengeful spirits? That's the thing. The ghost story didn't really come about until way later, thanks to a book that came out in 1967. Actually, there's no real proof that Sarah was obsessed with the occult. I mean, sure, seances were pretty popular back then, but there's nothing that says she was getting her design ideas from the spirit world.
Okay, but then what was behind all this crazy construction? Was she just really into home improvement? Like way too into it?
Well, Sarah Winchester was a complicated lady. What we do know is that she really loved architecture. It was like her creative outlet, her way to express herself. And maybe it even helped her cope with all that grief she had experienced.
It's almost like she was creating her own little world, a place where she could have some control over the chaos, find some peace in the middle of all that confusion.
Yeah, I think you're onto something. And don't forget, she was also giving a lot of people jobs. Her workers, they were employed through good times and bad. Even during the Depression, she always kept them busy. That says a lot about her, don't you think?
Definitely. That makes her a lot different than just some eccentric millionaire. It's like she used her wealth to make something truly unique and beautiful, and she took care of people at the same time.
And there's even more to her than that. Sarah wasn't just hiding away from the world. She actually got involved in some social causes that were pretty controversial for her time.
Really? Tell me more about that.
Yeah.
Now I'm really curious. It sounds like there's way more to Sarah Winchester than we realize.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Stay with us, and we're going to dig deeper into her story and find out what's really going on with this Winchester Mystery House. Okay, so you're probably thinking of this big, fancy Victorian house, with the towers and all that. But here's something interesting. In 1906, there was the San Francisco earthquake, and yeah, the Winchester Mystery House, it got hit.
Oh, wow. I
Yeah.
bet that really messed things up. So did the earthquake have anything to do with the house being so strange?
Totally. The big 7-story tower that the house was known for, it collapsed, and other parts of the house were damaged really badly. Sarah was actually trapped in her bedroom for hours until they got her out.
Are you serious? That must have been so scary. Did she rebuild the tower after that?
Nope, she just left it in ruins. It's almost like she saw the earthquake as like a sign from the universe or something.
Hold on. So she's building this huge, constantly changing house, and then a massive earthquake hits, and she just kind of goes with it. That's crazy.
It definitely makes you wonder, right? And it might explain why there are so many weird things in the house. Imagine whole sections just walled off because they collapsed. Staircases that lead to empty space where rooms used to be. The earthquake basically changed the whole design of the mansion.
I'm starting to see a pattern here. This wasn't just a house. It was like a reflection of Sarah's life, full of unexpected turns. So after the earthquake, did she keep going with that same over-the-top style?
Actually, no. After the earthquake, Sarah's architectural tastes kind of changed. She started to like designs that were more simple and practical. She even did. She had an elevator put in the house in 1916.
An elevator.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound very ghost confusing. It sounds like she was being practical. Maybe she was having trouble getting around with her arthritis.
Right. And this is where those stories from the workers come in. They said she was a really nice lady, generous. Even when construction had to stop, she still paid them. Not exactly the spooky recluse we always hear about, is she?
Not at all. It's interesting how much the ghost stories have shaped how we see Sarah Winchester, when in reality she was a complex woman.
Exactly. And remember, this was a time when women didn't really have a voice. But Sarah, she was out there supporting women's suffrage and animal rights. Pretty radical for back then.
Well,
It takes guts to stand up for what you believe in, especially when it's not the popular opinion.
okay, so we've got a woman who's a visionary architect, a caring employer, and a social activist, all while running a huge fortune and defying what society expected of her.
Right. She's like a real-life superhero without the costume.
So if the ghost stories are just stories, what about the actual paranormal activity at the Winchester Mystery House? With all that history and energy, wouldn't there have to be some ghosts there?
That's the big question, isn't it? And that's what we're going to talk about next. But here's something to think about. What if the house itself, with its bizarre design and its past, is what's fueling those ghost stories?
Okay, so we've learned that Sarah Winchester was a lot more than just some lady hiding from ghosts. She was a smart businesswoman, she cared about her employees, and she was ahead of her time when it came to women's rights and animals.
Yeah.
But what about the house itself? Is the Winchester Mystery House actually haunted?
That's the question that's been bugging people for ages.
Hmm.
And to be honest, we can't really say for sure if ghosts are real or not. But the interesting thing is how the Winchester Mystery House has become like the symbol for all things paranormal.
You mean like the house itself won't be making people think it's haunted?
Exactly. Think about it. This huge maze-like house with all its weird stuff, doors that lead to nothing, staircases that end at the ceiling windows that look into other rooms. It's like a giant playground for your imagination.
I can see how easy it would be to think every little sound is a ghost. Especially after hearing all those stories. It's like the house is a blank canvas for all our fears about the supernatural.
Right, and don't forget about the power of suggestion. If you go there expecting to find ghosts, you're going to think everything you see and hear is a ghost.
Yeah.
It's like setting yourself up for a spooky experience.
So are you saying that all the ghost stories are just people's imaginations running wild? Or maybe some clever marketing? Because let's face it, a good ghost story makes the place even more interesting.
Oh, it definitely plays a part. Think about when the ghost stories really took off. It was after the house became a tourist attraction in the 1920s. Before that, it was just known as the strange home of a rich widow.
So the ghost stories became part of the house's image, like an invisible addition to all the architecture.
Right. And as more and more people visited and shared their stories, whether they were real or made up, it created this cycle of ghost stories. The Winchester Mystery House became famous for being haunted, even if there weren't any real ghosts there.
It makes you wonder if Sarah Winchester was dealing with her own ghosts in a way. You know, the ghosts of her past, the grief she carried, the pressures she faced as a woman back then. Maybe the house was her way of dealing with all those invisible forces, creating a space where she could control them.
Wow, that's a really interesting thought. Maybe the Winchester Mystery House isn't about actual ghosts, but about how strong our fears are, our fascination with things we don't understand, and how we try to explain the mysteries around us.
Well, after this deep dive, I think it's safe to say Sarah Winchester and her mysterious mansion will keep fascinating people for a long time to come. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, the Winchester Mystery House shows us the power of mystery and how limitless our imagination can be.
And it reminds us that sometimes the most interesting mysteries aren't about supernatural stuff, but about how complicated humans are and the stories we tell ourselves to make sense of the world.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the Winchester Mystery House. What do you think? Was Sarah Winchester just misunderstood? Was she some kind of energy master? Or was she simply a woman who just really liked to build? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Forbidden Unveiled for more explorations into the strange and unusual. Thanks for listening.